Hello, Playwatch listeners. Alanah here. I'm actually not on this episode, and the boys forgot to record the video. So I think this is our first episode since episode 1 where we don't have video. It is what it is. Enjoy.
You were commenting on my pettiness, I believe.
I was. Do you want to tell the listeners what you call every file for Alanah?
I had pitched 2 years ago. Is it 2.5 years ago?
Wild. I think it's been 20 years.
Yes. I had pitched a vague Simpson reference, Up and Atom, where Adam is AATM for Austin, Alanah, Troy, Mike. And I was summarily dismissed. In fact, I don't even think that name was put to the floor for debate. And
I think me and Troy vetoed it because our letters were at the end, and that was unacceptable. Our egos wouldn't allow that.
I mean, look, I get it, but point being that every file name of my independently recorded audio has been AATM for 100 and however many episodes now.
In silent protest of the decision that was
now
made.
Vocal protest.
Vocal protest. Now canonically part of the show protest.
Yep, exactly. So I would appreciate it if the comments all rallied to my cause and referred to the show as AATM. Watch this get edited out.
Yeah. It's good. It's good. The metrics are gonna be solid. Hey.
Then you get any of my audio. Then that's great.
It's good. There'll be the audio. The listener will be able to imagine what you were saying.
Listener
in response.
Hello, listener.
Steven.
Hey, listener. How's it going?
Hello,
hey,
Steven.
Paul, you're right.
Hold on, I'm gonna lose you for a second.
I guess that's me, but I'm a listener.
First time listener, 160 episodes, part of the show.
Yes. That's a nice reverse ratio. First time listener, 107th time caller.
Yeah. Never listen. I just asked my question off the air. I just got back from Tejas, Texas to the layman. And I don't know,
I can tell because of the hat. The hat gives you away.
Yeah, this hat gave me away. Yeah. This hat gave me away too. Anyway, I don't know if you guys have because I mean, for all intents and purposes, Mike, you're a little bit further away from where you grew up, but not by much.
I mean, nothing's far from anything in this country, in fairness.
Yeah, you're 30 minutes away, either by train or by car or by walking. But like Austin, for you, for Denver, I had forgotten there's these three things that are just instantly Texas summer.
Heat and humidity.
It's humidity. No, it's cicadas, fireflies, and bluebell ice cream. Like those three ingredients make the most I were just sitting there.
What's bluebell ice cream?
Bluebell ice cream is something that if anybody is watching in Texas, especially Dallas, there's two things that are just Dallas staples, and it's bluebell homemade ice cream. Is you can only find it's indigenous and I think limited to Texas. They don't ever send them out anywhere, but it's just the best. I've been in Jerry's and all of that. No, can't even hold a candle, and especially to the bluebell ice cream sandwiches. Those things are just heaven, a little slice of heaven. But the cicadas.
Wait, what's the second? You said Dallas.
Oh, sorry, the two things: a bluebell and then Mrs. Baird's bread. So just off of Mockingbird in '75 was a big. It started off really, really small, and then Hostess was like the national competitor. This was its homegrown thing. But if you drove past the factory that was just off of Central Expressway, I think it was Mockingbird in '75, which is also Central Expressway. If you drove by right at the perfect moment in the morning, which I did driving when I worked downtown, you could smell them baking the bread. And it was so strong that even in your car driving 75 miles an hour on the freeway, it just filled the air. So that reminds me of cold winter mornings. Because the season that I worked in Dallas was during the winter.
The presumably heavenly experience of passing through the baking cloud.
Mm-hmm. And you could always smell it. It was just it's a
sounds fantastic.
Unmistakable scent. But yeah, the cacophonous summer sounds of the cicadas and just how they undulate together and then break apart and get louder and get quieter. And then the fireflies. I was like, man, I had forgotten about me, of all people, forgot about fireflies.
Well, you have a difficult relationship with fireflies.
I do. It's a little conflicted. But Traveler was like, what the hell is that?
Narratively interesting, though. Like, there's depth to it. It's good.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah,
I just didn't know if you guys had that as well.
What was his reaction to the fireflies?
He just was trying to write. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, dude, those are bugs. He was like, what? I was like, we call them lightning bugs or fireflies. And he was like, and he was like, can I go chase them? And my brother-in-law, Tim, goes, there's another insect that's very prone to indicative of Texas, which are chiggers. And he was like, you don't want to go back in there right now.
God, those are the worst.
Well, Pam just experienced it. She ran through the field. She's like, oh, I'm having so much fun. It's so beautiful back here. And I was like, well,
they're like mosquitoes, but you can't swat them, so you just end up with your skin all irritated and
you don't know. Like a mosquito, instantly you got bit. A chigger
so
is like,
you're gonna go home and then it's gonna hit.
Pam has 30. Okay. She looks like she just walked into a bee's nest and was like, "Bring it on! What do you want to do?" Oh. It's the worst itch too, and it's a mosquito bite can I'll go away in a day or two. These chigger bites last. So I just didn't know for you guys if you have anything that's that indicative, not necessarily of a summer season, but you're like, oh, if I smell this, hear this, see this, I'm instantly transported back to my hometown. I'll take my answer off the air.
I grew up in Brighton, so the answer to that question is probably not suitable for the podcast. But yeah,
whenever I smell meth being made,
human suffering.
No, I mean you got the seawater. Like, I mean,
the seawater for me. Yeah, whenever I get back to Brighton, it's always seawater, that salty air. Yeah, that's the ticket. Immediately transports me back.
Funny enough, my grandparents were both. Well, my mom mostly, but the whole family's from the South. Arkansas also had the cicadas and the fireflies and the fucking poison ivy and all the other stuff that we did not have in Colorado. Colorado being so dry, most of these we did have cicadas.
Did you?
Yeah,
I feel like
that's
just a Holy South thing.
No, they definitely have them up in the proper forests in the mountains.
All right.
But they're real loud and aggressive in the South, and I associate that with visiting my grandparents. So I have a similar nostalgia-y. First time I ever saw Firefly, it was probably slightly older, but comparable to your traveler story, where I was visiting my grandfather in Arlington, and he had a little garden. He had probably a good solid 1 acre plot, I would guess, maybe a little less than that. But it felt like a lot of land because the house was also pretty small. So there was a big garden and a big backyard. But then there was a little creek, and there was all this poison ivy and stuff that would grow around by the water. But at night you'd see the little flashes. And I remember we drove like in a minivan there, and it was going to take a couple days to get back home. And I don't know how old I was, but probably 6 or 7 or 8. But I remember catching one and putting it in a jar, and then trying to basically see if it would light up right in front of me, which of course I'm pretty sure it immediately died. And it was a big fail, but I was sitting there holding it like any moment for like the day and a half ride back.
I don't think I've ever seen one. Hearing you talk about it, I think it's one of those things I saw my first hummingbird a few weeks ago.
Really? Wow.
Well, because I grew up in the UK. Like, I was in Disneyland, and there was a hummingbird just kind of came in, and it was doing the hummingbirds flying, and I was like, oh my god, I've never actually seen one of these. Obviously seen them in videos and nature documentary or whatever. Same with fireflies. I don't think I've ever seen a firefly in real life.
Well, you'll have to come to my house too. We have like tons of hummingbirds. We just have a lot of things that attract them, so that we have a lot of hummingbirds. But fireflies, same thing. It's a very interesting experiment, because what we would do is we would get a big mason jar, punch holes in the top of it, and then we would run around outside, and it's always just right at dusk. Like, that's when you want to do it. And I
probably didn't punch the holes in there.
That's the key thing. Oxygen is good. But I went in there.
If you listen to take one thing from this episode, oxygen
It's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Even for bugs.
We would try to fill them up, and you could get a pretty good amount, and then you seal them in there. But what's interesting is they don't do that in captivity. Essentially, they won't light up. So
I think, aren't they doing it kind of as a social behavior? Like,
has to be. I'm sure somebody's going to go, actually, what it is it's a response to. I can't wait.
Assume it's like
in the
mating.
comments.
It's usually mating or hating, right? Usually an animal's going to do
get away or come here.
yeah, exactly. Like those are your
look at me or go away.
I do feel like, because I feel like I've never seen. I don't have a memory of seeing like one random one. It would be along the tree line or whatever. They just kind of dot the whole field of view almost. And so I feel like it's not necessarily communication, but yeah, like a mating display. I have no idea. I'll be Alanah and Google it.
All right. It is very interesting because I don't know if you've ever heard of speaking of Texas phenomena, the Marfa lights, which are the mysterious ghost lights of Marfa. Out in southwest Texas, there is a little town called Marfa that's known for two things. Number one, I believe it's someone's going to correct me, I think it's an Hermes store or it's a Gucci store that was actually done as kind of like an art installation piece, but it's actually a fully functioning store. So like if you look, and again, if it's Hermes, it's like London, Paris, Tokyo, LA, Marfa, Texas. It's just like the most random. You have to take left, right there at that, you'll see a possum in the road. That's Phil. And then just keep about a quarter mile, you'll see it. But there's these ghost lights that if you park your car just off the highway, which is like a 2-lane highway, way off in the distance, just along the horizon, this time of night, you'll see these lights, just like these orbs that will light up and they'll go up and they'll move. And I mean, everyone has tried to get out there, and the closer they get to them, the further they move. And there's no explanation.
So what is it, like a mirage? They've never explained. It's not like a mirage.
No idea. But I mean, it is. You will look and you'll be like, "What is that?" And it's like, is it gas or obviously there's some explanation to it. But until you see it, it's something to see. But fireflies are very much the same way because trying to get to them, they always feel like, man, the fellow's right there. They're like actually just a little bit further away.
So I Googled, why do fireflies glow?
Tell us.
Yep.
I like that immediately Google doesn't understand the difference between how and why, because it goes, fireflies produce light in a special organ in their abdomen by combining a chemical called luciferin, which is fun, enzymes called luciferases, and oxygen,
and metal.
and the fuel for cellular work, ATP. So it's essentially a chemical reaction that releases light. That is not why they do it. That's how they do it. So I clicked on the Scientific American article, and honestly, this whole thing is fascinating. So check this out.
Go.
They produce. This is our new show, by the way. Austin Reed, without Alanah here as the video game sort of influence.
No one's here for the video game
science, bitches.
Yeah.
There is someone still watching for video game insights, and they're very disappointed. But that was one person.
Any second, they're going to talk about Kojima.
Any second.
So they produce a chemical reaction inside their bodies that allows them to light up. This type of light production is called bioluminescence. The method by which they do it is perhaps the best known example of bioluminescence. When oxygen combines with calcium and ATP and the chemical luciferin in the presence of luciferase, a bioluminescent enzyme, light is produced. Unlike a light bulb, which produces a lot of heat in addition to the light, a firefly's light is cold light without a lot of energy being lost to heat. This is necessary because if their light organ got as hot as a light bulb, they would not survive. They're able to control.
Also, they burn out really quickly as well because obviously they're tiny, so their energy reserve.
Yeah, they're like, I'm fucking tired.
You can't waste the energy. Yeah.
A firefly controls the beginning and end of the chemical reaction by adding oxygen to other chemicals needed to produce it. This happens in their light organ. I just love the idea of there being a light organ.
Damn straight.
When oxygen is available, the light organ lights up.
One of my favorite electronic bands.
Because they don't have lungs and instead transport oxygen from outside of the body to the interior cells within through a complex series of successively smaller tubes known as tracheoles. For a long time, it was a mystery as to how they would manage such a high flash rate, considering the relatively slow speed of the muscles that control oxygen transport. Researchers fairly recently learned that nitric oxide gas, the same gas that is produced by taking the drug Viagra, plays a critical role in firefly flash control. In short, when their light is off, no nitric oxide is being produced. In this situation, oxygen that enters the light organ is bound to the surface of the cell's energy-producing organelles and is thereby not able to transport further within the light organ. They appear to light up for a variety of reasons. The first one it lists is it's a defensive mechanism because they produce steroids that make them unpalatable to predators.
This is a very chemically interesting insect.
What's
right?
up,
like
bro? That's the
what's
thing.
up? You like my light up
Viagra,
ass, bro?
steroids, and Lucifer.
That's the thing.
Luciferian chemicals.
I was looking for the one sentence takeaway, and I just kept glimpsing. I was like, I got to read this whole thing. So I love that they basically taste terrible to predators, and so the light is essentially a reminder. Hey, this is going to be unpleasant for you, so don't do it.
Discovered by Anton LaVey, founder of the Satanic Church.
Also,
definitely tried to eat one.
This is also interesting.
At some point, someone must have tried to eat one. If they can categorically say in Scientific American that they taste bad, that means someone
predators. I'm not sure that the writers for Scientific American are necessarily the natural predator, but
it's kinda, someone in history had to. Yeah, it's like
I think it's the Luciferian stuff. It's just
tastes like
I'll try some jelly. Yeah, give me some jelly.
Viagra and metal. It tastes like an aging metalhead. Yeah.
It's a little better with the jelly.
Considering everything that we've already discovered, like eels and lobsters, you're definitely right that someone has tasted everything at some point, and those which are not part of our regular diet clearly
the scientific method.
The bravest humans were the ones that go, all right, fuck it, I'm going to eat it. At some point, everything was weird. He's like, Gary, you're not actually going to eat that cow, are you? He's like, dude, I'm hungry, and that looks really good.
Well, worse than that is the first guy who discovered that you could drink cow's milk.
Yeah.
Like, that's a conversation.
That was a long,
That's a conversation.
Oh, fuck, I think I'm going to drink it.
Oh, it does.
I'm going to squirt it in my mouth. Cow's like...
I'm always
Jim, don't do it. Jim, don't do it. No, you don't have to. No, I think it might work.
Oh, it's good. Oh, fuck it. I love it now.
Yeah, it's really good. I'm stuck now, yeah.
I'm always convinced that it was always
what if I whipped
like
it up and put some salt in how I made butter? Oh, shit.
Oh, shit. Oh, no, I built an entire
I'll leave it,
Aquarian society based on this.
I'm going to leave it out overnight. Ah, fuck, I made yogurt. Put it in the freezer. Put it in the freezer.
Agriculture as a concept exists entirely to cover up for a dude who decided to do something gross to a cow.
Like
That's
how in
why
your
society
fiction,
happened.
all of those were the same guy.
It had to have been.
It's the same
this guy
weird
did
guy.
not date. There was nothing else. If that guy... No. If one person on this planet had shown him just an ounce of love, we would be all lactose free. We would never.
We'd still be in the caves. We'd still be in the caves.
He was like, if just one person looked at me in the right way and just smiled and offered me their hand, I would never have made cheese.
How history would be different.
Oh.
All right, I got a couple more for you.
Go ahead.
There are different species of fireflies, and they flash different ways. And that's how they tell each other apart as being different species. It's a signaling of like to like.
Steve. Shit, sorry. Gary? Gary.
That's it. I fucking love that. I think that's so interesting.
That's great.
And,
hey, dude, I'm not Gary. My name is actually Jason. It's a physical comedy show, guys.
Who is this? Yeah. No, we're doing very
Have we started recording yet?
Well. This is good content.
Oh, shit. Let me press record. Let's change settings. Do I want to update? Guys, I'm just going to do a real quick Windows update. I'll be...
Oh, good. Much appreciated.
I have a video game question.
All right, go for it.
Here go new timestamps. Hard left turn. Has anybody played Shredder's Revenge?
No. I saw that it was
really good.
I saw that it was like crushing it on Steam.
It seems like it would be good for you. You're a big arcade fan. So
it is like it's taken me back to the only thing is I just beat it last night. You can play it by yourself. But it is definitely made to be like it's a side scroller beat 'em up. Grab your friends, and the cool thing is it constantly prompts you like, do you want to party up? To where you can go online and actually find other people and do that. But it would be so much fun because this, you know what happens with those, like whether it be like Battletoads or TMNT, like Turtles in Time or whatever, where it just or Marvel vs. Capcom was a good example too. It just the screen became chaos of everybody doing as many combos as they could to fill up their power meter, and then doing their super move, their special. And it's just like almost so much that the graphics of the video just like cranking down on it. It's
that frame rate just starting to dip below 60. Just that kind of, oh no.
And it's a French developer. They're fairly small. And they just went for it. They were like, we want this to feel as if this thing was made in like 94, 95. And it's so good. They got the OG cast back on it. Wow. Even the way that like the bosses die, you know, they would do that one thing where they would just reuse a frame of animation to where they're just going
flash,
yeah,
like that. They do that. It's just like
a firefly trying to yell at someone.
It's exactly what it is. I mean, literally the same thing. To where
such
it's
a
like,
long setup for that payoff.
Hey man, I'm sorry. Are you Paul? Paul.
Me and Troy planned this ahead of
Paul?
time. This is the whole thing.
Oh shit, man. I'm sorry, dude. Doug. Hey, Doug, it's me. Yeah, it's Greg.
Hey, all the people playing Shredder's Revenge don't understand that. They're just going, "Why is it?"
Kudos to the rights holders for getting for letting a small team do something really creative with the IP. That's always really cool when you see, that kind of thing happening.
Turns out totally unlicensed.
Well,
just seeing how long before they get taken down from Steam. And then disappear.
The Shredder is not unlicensed. That's
the whole thing. It's like Nickelodeon is like signed on with it.
It's legit. Yeah.
So,
that was an example of humor for those in the back.
Sorry. Okay.
Got it. Yeah, you just sucked at it.
What you got to do is, if you're going to do humor, it needs to be built around Fireflies as a concept, Austin. That's
kind of what we're doing.
I'm here for
it's all Firefly jokes.
I'm here for the Firefly hard science. Y'all are the jokers.
So
I am here for the cow-related jokes, so that I'm down with.
Okay.
I'm curious, Mike, because it's a small team. And I believe it could be a French Canadian team. So forgive me, I haven't looked them up.
Yeah.
But just a lot of French names on the credits.
I was gonna say you saw a lot of flicks over the
Accent Claude. I like reading the credits, partly because I wanted to see if they did get the OG cast, and they did. But also I wanted to see how big the team was. I wanted to see like if it was typically indicative. And what I've seen lately post COVID is that that is a very the names are just so varied because they're pulling from all sorts of places. Like there's people that are able to work for a company like, I've never been there before. I'm in Poland, but they're in Montreal or whatever.
I bet with a game like that as well, you seek out the great pixel artists. You seek out the people around the world who are the perfect fit for that. It's such a specific thing you're trying to evoke with that game that I bet you go to like the dude over here who's great at that, the woman over here who's great at that, and just kind of pull them together.
Montreal,
that kind of game.
What do you think the budget for that is? Do you think it's just like a holy shit, we've got a hit on our hands, or do you think they knew going in this will absolutely smash it?
You never know, but I suspect. I mean, the numbers would have been good because you've got you obviously when you think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the game space, the only game, because there's been lots of licensed Teenage Mutant, but the only game you think of is Turtles in Time, right? So I can definitely see that pitch. Like that's a straightforward pitch, just to go in and be like, hey, you know that one Turtles game that everyone loves? We want to make basically a sequel to that. So yeah, the budget would have been reasonable. Pixel art's more expensive than everyone realizes, so it would have been a bit pricier probably than it looks. Oh, pixel art's so expensive. To do it right, yeah.
I would always think that would be like, hey, it's low pro, so therefore it's cheaper. But I mean, I think about this. It's a lot easier to do an electronica record than it is to do a lo-fi analog record, because you're talking about actual musicians.
It's very similar.
Okay.
Well, remember when you're making, if I'm making a 3D game, I'm making a 3D game. I'm making an Uncharted. I'm making a whatever AAA kind of game.
Go for it.
Whatever. I pay a lot of money to make
art.
A main character, to make Joel. I'm mixing up my Naughty Dogs. To make a character, I spend a lot of money. My 3D model has to be beautiful, obviously beautifully rendered.
Sure.
I have to hire a great actor to play him. I have to rig it up. I have to do a bunch of work. But once I've done that work once, I've got that character, the actual creation of content with that character is pretty cheap. I have to animate it. I can make new animations, but if I need to move the camera around, I can do this.
That's cheap.
It's really cheap. It's all really cheap because you basically spent a lot of money on an asset and then you can just use that asset. Okay. With pixel art, you're doing frame by frame by frame.
Got it.
There's no, if I've got my pixel art character and I'm like, you know what, for this scene, I want to move the camera over here.
Ooh.
Or I want to move the camera closer to the character. If you're sticking to that pixel art ratio, if you want to move the camera in, you gotta blow it out.
Or
there's some people who are playing with pixel art and recoloring of pixels and doing really clever stuff with that. There's some very cool
to substitute lighting.
To substitute lighting
texture?
Or like costume changes and texture, that kind of thing. There's some really clever tech and a lot of stuff is done like that. There's also a lot of people who are doing a really good job of rendering 3D to look like pixel art. So Dead Cells is a good example of that. Dead Cells isn't pixel art. There is pixel art in there, but like the character in Dead Cells is a 3D model being rendered and put through some process to make it look like pixel art.
That game, as a side note, is just so great.
So great.
Okay, here's where it lost me, and I fully admit that it's not a flaw of the game. It's 100% me. Man, I'm so picky. I want easy barrier of entry with a gradual climb up, and that game is not. From the very onset, it is like, here's your system tree.
Textbook road, like hit your head against a wall until you get into this. Yeah, 100%.
And I was like, which I mean, like dungeon crawlers or Castlevania-esque kind of games. That's not what I grew up playing. That wasn't the thing that I loved. Prince of Persia, though, I loved. So I definitely loved figuring out those mechanics. But Prince of Persia was just so wholly different. Karateka or Kung Fu Master, all those I could really get down on. But for some reason, like Castlevania, I was like, fuck. I need to go back and open that chest, but I have to go through the gauntlet of everything that I just did. I didn't like that.
Did you play Hades? I can't remember if you ever actually played it.
I know I did. I never finished it, and that has nothing to do again with the game. It was just like I was playing it on my Switch, and because I was such
another
a
game
holdout.
that's 3D pretending to be 2D, which is really clever again.
Yeah, but it's actually what's it called?
Isometric.
Like an isometric camera, yeah. But it's not. A lot of their previous games have been lots of 2D painted character art. With that one, I think the characters are 3D, but again, like just rendered to look.
The art
like
and the music and the conceit of it, I thought was flawless. It's literally a flaw in the gamer, not the game, as far as like why it didn't hold my attention. And not that it didn't hold my attention, but it was just like that's not what I want to play right now. Because typically, if I have my Switch, I'm either taxi, takeoff, and landing, or I'm in a hotel room, and so I don't have necessarily the time that those games to me demand to be able to play. It's like I've got 15 minutes. That's why Mario Kart is just so great.
It's an investment you're making with a game like that for sure.
Yeah,
like same reason I've still not gotten to Elden Ring, and I might never.
That's just not my vibe.
But I feel like
such an investment. I can't.
But that's the strength of Dead Cells and Hades both, is that it's realistic to sit and have a 15-minute run, and then if you just do one
it is,
run,
but I can see where Troy's coming from. It's intimidating.
It is.
Like, don't get me wrong, I play it in that way, but like that first time you sit down with it, like you probably don't want to spend. You're not playing that first session. Is not 15 minutes.
Right.
Once you've got into its rhythms, you're then there. But I can see why that genre puts some folks off.
And it's
I
also
love it personally, but I get it.
The reason why that first session could be 15 minutes is because you fail as opposed to achieved, even though it is very much of that roguelike kind of thing to be like, that's part of the thing where you die and you get better. But I was like, fuck, I failed. And it's like, I like the Shredder's Revenge was perfect because each episode was about anywhere from 7 to 12 minutes. And there were a few that I was like, fuck, I died on this. And I'm playing on the lowest level because Traveler and I could play it. And he was so into it because it's mainly a button masher. You can do some super moves if you want to, but because of Mario Kart, he's learned is like, hey, dude, these let you do your specials. And so he can understand, is like, I'll just tell you, do your special. He's like, boom, X or boom, Y. And he can do that. But for us to be able to play a game together, it was so much fun. And that's the thing that I do love about the Switch is that even though it was a big holdout for it, to go from here to here, great. Is amazing. But their marketing,
especially for someone like you that travels so much as well.
Exactly. Just pick up my game, throw it in the dock.
Yeah.
But I found out about it because I Traveler's like, I want to play a new game. I was like, all right, let's see what's on the store. And it was like pre-order. I was like, oh, pre-order? Boom. And it was like for tomorrow. Like I had not seen any marketing for this thing. So I just can't think that they were like, it felt like an inside, even though, or maybe even more like a limbo, to where a little studio that puts out a good game, and then the industry goes, now you're a hit, as opposed to a shitload of money being thrown at it for marketing. But those are just so few and far between. I just didn't know what your thoughts. I also would love, Austin, to know what your thoughts of the music are. Not that that's the limit of your perspective.
That's all I'm allowed to speak on.
But it definitely did a great thing with the music, as far as like
A sample of it here.
Ghost Killa's on there doing like it's pretty cool.
You're selling me on it.
It's so good, man. There's a lot of people that are talking about it right now, and with good reason. I hope somebody on the team hears this. And
they're Montreal based, by the way. I don't know if you heard.
I had a feeling. That. Yeah, it was either Paris or Montreal, but I figured it was Montreal. I just hope somebody listens and hears the praise, because it's a super, super fun game, and it's just executed wonderfully. And it reminds me. I mean,
they don't get people who make the games. The people who make the games. I sound like fucking Donald Trump. People who make the pixel art games, like they don't get.
They make them. They make them big. They make them small. We made them bigger.
They make them. It's real. That was scarily good. No, it's a real, like, it's a very. It's like stop motion animation. It's like it is the least efficient way of making a video game. But the artistry is fascinating. Like the talent and skill, and like I said, there are people working on trying to make it more cost efficient. But it's one of those things that's just, it takes a lot of time. If I make an animation for a 3D character, I can remap that to a different character.
So what do you think their dev cycle
10 different kinds of enemies. I can
without playing it, of course, I understand, but I mean,
sure. Like a pixel art brawler. I mean, it honestly comes down to like how many artists they had working on the animations and the sprites and stuff like that. I don't imagine it was technically a very complex game, except I guess the multiplayer component would probably have been a fair amount of work.
And it's unique fighting styles to each. It's not like everybody's punching. It's like everyone has the reason why you play in Leonardo, because he has specific skills that Raphael doesn't. But the whole point of it is to squad up. And you can play as April, you can play as Splinter, you can play as a secret character that I'm not going to talk about until after you beat the game. It's awesome. But everything is unique. And
it's Joel. It's 100% Joel.
All right, I'm endorsed by Shredders.
For the first quarter of the game.
And then it gets terrible. It just gets really sad. No Turtles game would ever make you cry. You're welcome. April dies.
Awesome. April dies.
Splinter dies.
Yeah.
This is just bad.
No, kudos to the team. Kudos to, was it Nickelodeon, I think, has Turtles now. Like, kudos to them for giving them the space to do it. Yeah, it just sounds like a cool. That's the kind of licensed game I want to play. Just cool execution on an IP.
Music's great too.
The studio has made a bunch of other games, and a few of them are in that, reasonably successful, like in the 200 to 500,000 units on Steam Spy. They have several others.
That's pretty substantially impressive for a modern indie studio.
They have kudos. They have 3 in that range. I definitely have heard of one of these called Panzer Paladin. I have no idea why I heard of that. I never played of it, but I remember someone that I was talking to mentioning it. So they've shipped a bunch of games.
Can I
Good for them.
Can I just comment on something that you just said that I really feel is important, that those who listen or watch understand, because I just became aware of this, and maybe some people already were, because I know there's a lot of people from the industry that listen to this, and maybe they're standing up and going, thank you. It's probably a commonplace assumption to think that most people know that, sure, not every game does this, but for the most part, whenever a game is sold, whenever it's offered on a platform like Steam or multi-consoles, whether it be Xbox or PlayStation or Switch, that it just automatically is making, or selling rather, millions of copies. At least 1 million copies.
Oh, far from it.
But something that you just pointed out, which is 200 to 500,000 units sold is we're making another game level of success for an independent.
More than that, yeah. That's a let's get some champagne success for indies nowadays. Like back in the day, 2012, there was a time. So when Thomas Was Alone came out, it wasn't you were guaranteed 1 million units, but you were guaranteed like it was called the money hose back then. Steam, like all the indies called it was like if you were making indie games, getting on Steam was a massive deal. Like, it only happened to a few of us. And when that happened, it was the money hose was pointed at you, and you were kind of guaranteed a level of success. Those days are gone. Like, that
what made the change?
For a studio coming through now.
Is it just sheer, like, the landscape is too filled, or what is it?
Loads of things. More games, the PC kind of market moving to a different place. Yeah, there's lots of reasons for it. But it is definitely like now, 200 to 500,000 units for an indie kind of company with a game that's not got like a major publisher backing it marketing wise. Good on them. That's great.
By my napkin math, if you shipped their games, all fall in the broadly $20 range, a little less than that. 250,000 units sold after Steam's 30% take is over $3 million in revenue. Depending, and their games are, looks like one every 18 months that they're shipping a game.
So you're falling into a couple of traps there that I feel duty bound by those same developers Troy mentioned to kind of point out to you.
I'm not calling that profit. I'm saying gross revenue purely from Steam's take, before you talk about any publisher agreement, before you talk about any, obviously,
it ain't 3 million.
How? Okay, so where does that money go?
I mean, there's also refunds.
Obviously, we're purely speculating. We understand.
You're the majority. So I obviously, and this is true. Steam Spy, the numbers on there, my numbers are definitely wrong. There's lots of numbers on there that are wrong on Steam Spy.
I just made up a number of 250K.
But what I'm saying, the key thing that people often miss, like if you read Steam Spy and it said 250K or whatever,
it said 200 to 500,000. So I went low within that range.
Yeah.
And just so I know, Steam Spy is an actual number because it is sell in as opposed to, or it is sell through as opposed to sell in. Meaning it's not
the way it tracks the numbers is a bit flawed. So sometimes it can massively underestimate. But let's say that's the real number, and Austin's right to lowball it. That makes sense. What you're forgetting is the vast majority of games are sold at discount. And often by a drastic discount.
So like a Steam sale goes on, and this
I don't know
thing
what
is
their
$5.
policy is on sales. For all I know, some indies stay high, but most of us these days will often be dipping in and out of sales. So if you're looking at someone's like sale number from Steam Spy, unfortunately that sum of like, let's multiply this number by $30. I mean, if you look, there are ways of finding this out. If you look at like what their lowest, like what was the lowest they ever went on a discount, you can assume that
the majority of their
half
sales,
of the sales you're seeing were at that price.
Right.
So it's
makes sense.
That's the one that I think because you often see gamers like go on to Steam Spy and look at that and kind of come up with numbers that are very big, which makes perfect sense. But then you remember, oh no, but like so Thomas Was Alone, for example, is $10 and it sold 2.5 million units. I didn't make $25 million from that game.
Right.
It's like, it's because Humble Bundles, because...
I was going to say, Humble actually
sales,
added to Steam Spy
that all counts.
Yeah, and...
That all counts.
So here's the question.
So it's often what I would suggest generally. What's good if you want to use things like Steam Spy, and if you're making games, you should probably be looking at the marketplace and going, "Oh, what's this?" Always compare like for like. So then it's not useful to try and work out how much money this company's game made. But if you were thinking of making a game in a similar genre, you could look at 10 games in that genre and start to use those numbers to make comparisons and kind of. Comparing is usually better than just trying to arrive at a number.
Okay, so
here's all filtered in the same way.
Something that I feel is important to point out. Then I'm not saying that this is what this Shredder's Revenge budget was, but let's say a game on Steam that's going to be in that indie space that's going to hopefully sell our median figure made up number of 250,000 copies. Let's just say that their budget is $2 to $2.5 million.
Yeah.
That means that most likely, even though they're a success, they're not profitable.
Well, then you get into a few things of, first off, I assume it came out on other platforms other than Steam. So you've got all those other platforms as well stacking up.
Okay.
Also, you've got a long tail, which that game will be sold on multiple times over the next 5 years or whatever.
But when the publisher's looking at that going, how did we do? What's our opening weekend, essentially? How because most people are going to buy it day one or at least hopefully within the first month of window. May some people would wait for a Steam sale or whatever, but then again, you're dipping into that. My question is, does a publisher go where it's not about making a game, it's about establishing an IP so that we can extrapolate and do Shredder's Revenge 2 and Shredder's Revenge 5 and Turtles and, is that the hope of it? Or is it literally this game has to be profitable, or is it this game needs to be successful? Or
it's not one size fits all. It's not one size fits all. There are so a publisher. Many publishers have published games they knew wouldn't be profitable because they knew they'd be like critical darlings. So it raises the quality of the brand. It can do that. Definitely, publishers
Oscar
I think
bait
sometimes
equivalent.
with my games have exactly the same as an Oscar bait movie. Like they've put out those kind of games where they don't think they're going to make profit. Often it's to establish an IP, like you say, so they take maybe a bit of a hit on the first one. But to be honest, if you take a bit of a hit on the first one, maybe you don't want to invest more money into a sequel anyway. So your IP kind of falls and dies there. There's weird stuff. So like, for example, like I don't know if this Turtles game was it in Game Pass.
I have no
that
idea.
Might have just covered the entire. If they were, like theoretically, if they were, that could have covered their entire dev budget just like that.
I'm curious to see where the majority of their sales
publishers. Yeah, sometimes publishers are not actually, and this is going to be something that's definitely going to grow over the next few years. And this is definitely true of developers already when we're thinking about future projects. Like the player, you know, the individual listening to this is the customer in the extent of I want to make games to entertain that person. But in terms of the customer, in terms of who's paying my company, it's a publisher, it's often a platform holder. If we're about to hit, like, there's going to be a Game Pass on every platform, if I'm making a TV show for Netflix, I'm making something that I want to be popular with an audience, obviously, but my customer is Netflix. I'm selling to them.
Right.
And I think that's something we're going to see more and more of like, you know, potentially the games I make in the future will be paid by platforms, and to an extent it won't matter how many units they sell as long as that platform continues to think that my games are worth putting on their platform. You know what I mean? So it's we're potentially about to transition into a service model where my direct connection to the end consumer is broken, and that can lead to some bad outcomes. You know, that can lead to complacency, that can lead to shows getting cancelled 2 seasons in, despite an audience who loves it. You know, it can lead to very strange stuff with, and if we're not careful with games, we could fall into some traps with that.
Austin, for you, as someone who you work differently than me, I've worked to try to make my, you know, earn a seat at the table that's a little bit closer to the big kids table, as opposed to just being an actor that gets hired to come in either to the booth or the stage, but actually to try to collaborate with the team, just to learn and hopefully have a different role outside of that. You've kind of had more of that. You do the same thing, where you're not just, I'll write the music for you and go away. You like to be a part of the team. You like to think about design. So you've probably been privy to some of these conversations too. And some of this math that I learned on a recent call was just mind-blowing to me. And you're like, yeah, this is about how it works. Do you see this, like, what I'm talking about as far as the landscape changing, you were kind of like, yeah, this is, that would be considered a big success. But what has your experience been for some of these smaller, because you do a lot of times work with AAAs, but you also work with smaller studios as well. What are they hoping to achieve? What is their like benchmark for success? And you've worked with those who have had sequels. So I'm curious what your experience has been.
Yeah, it's Mike definitely said it best when saying that it's pretty hard to generalize because, like, I've worked on games. I don't want to speak out of turn, so I'll be super broad and abstract, but I've worked on games
Let's
where...
say Massassin's Dream.
Yeah. Santa Barga. Yeah.
Santa Barga. Banner Saga is actually an interesting one because they basically, the 3 principals who started that company effectively lived off savings, paid themselves nothing, did a Kickstarter that they raised like $750,000, put that towards the hard costs outside of their own, like they paid themselves nothing. They owned the company. So they just basically were hoping to have the game succeed, and that was going to be their income. And hiring sound design and actors, and obviously they empowered me to hire a great big orchestra in Dallas, speaking of. And
Myerson's a beautiful place, isn't it?
It was pretty awesome. And so their metric for success was, can the income from this finance a sequel? Because the Kickstarter always propositioned it as a trilogy. And so they knew that they had more story to tell if they should be so lucky. And so it was like, you know, can we basically make enough money to do all this again, but without, like, now it needs to be enough of a threshold that our bills are like, we're now paying ourselves as a team, because we can basically bootstrap through the development of one game, but you can't just go unpaid forever. Like they all had families and kids, and like so the metric for them was definitely real cash. Right. But I've worked on other projects where they made these kinds of platform deals and things like you're talking about. I've worked on games where they were profitable before one unit had sold. And so it didn't.
That happens a lot
because
a platform will pay. We'll have a conversation offline about it, but the platforms will pay you to be on their platform
for exclusivity.
And sometimes that
I understand.
Money will.
I got you. We understand that your budget is X, $1 million. We'll give you $3 million if you give us exclusivity. Gotcha.
Yeah, and then you're profitable before anyone actually likes it. I was going to say, I think weirdly, if you're looking for like the metric of the popularity of a game rather than necessarily how much money it made, I think Austin might be sitting on the best possible metrics, because I reckon your album sales, Austin,
are very indicative of popularity.
About like whether, because but not profitability, because I bet some of your albums that don't have as many like listeners on them made more money because of these kind of business models or whatever.
You're speaking to cult following, essentially.
Basically, I reckon you could definitely like look at your listener numbers, and you could glean a lot about like
100%.
how much something's connected.
No, you can absolutely. There's a really strong corollary between like Spotify. I mean, it's a little messy because sometimes a really well positioned playlist with a huge number of followers will grab one of your tracks, and then.
But that still speaks to that point, though. There's a popularity to where even if it's essentially derivative content, right? You understand that the music is a part of the thing, but as far as where you saw it as like a second window thing, if Taylor Swift goes, oh my God, I just played Banner Saga and I love the music and I've been listening to this, and bam, it blows up, that's not necessarily saying that people are going to go buy the game, but they might listen to the music. So the IP has popularity that extends beyond a sale of a game.
Yeah, but I do think in general, like, all I meant by the playlisting thing is I'll look at breakdown. Like, there's one track in the middle of Banner Saga 1 that has way more streams per month than the rest. And it's because it's sitting on someone's like really popular D&D playlist or something like that. Like,
sure.
So they don't even necessarily know what it's from. And a lot of the people who come and listen to that, they want like cool, moody, quasi medieval D&D music or whatever, and they don't even necessarily look to see what's playing on that play. There's like 200 tracks or whatever, there's tens of thousands of people that listen to that playlist every day or whatever. So, but that's a secondary.
Those outliers will happen, but I bet still over enough time and enough like noise, I bet still indicative.
It is interesting. I mean, Journey is far and away my most popular album, but I bet you
never heard it.
I bet you, like, probably, I would guess Assassin's Creed is the best-selling game that I've scored. Probably.
Yeah, they would have made the most. They would have made the most money, probably.
But it's hard to say. I mean, there's been a few. Like Monaco was a kind of similar situation to Thomas Was Alone, insofar as it through the course of generally good sales, being at that same window of time, humble and all that. It's millions of units.
Going
also
on and on and on. Yeah.
I also want to point out something that you, based on a conversation, Austin, that you and I had, to anybody who is wanting to make their own game and like willing to bootstrap it and do whatever it takes and eat ramen until they make it. Something that we heard from very successful people in the business who have watched small games be successful and fail, said the notion of I won't even take a salary is actually, to people who want to give you money, a red flag.
Yeah,
that was a big mind shift.
Like people who DM you saying, "I'll come work for you for free." It's like,
no, because I need you. I need this to be the only thing that you do. It's not like, man, I'll go wash dishes and make this.
I need you to value yourself as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and that even means, Mike, you've taken this position before. Is like, this is my ship essentially. I have a lot of people that work for me, and a lot of people on my ship that are helping me get this from this ship from one shore to the other. But ultimately, they eat before I do. But at the same time, it's like, but the captain can't be starving. The captain needs to be able to eat.
But yeah, you definitely, you you prioritize. But you're right. Like, yeah, but you wouldn't want to be on the ship with the captain who was starving, right? That's a bad ship. You want to get off that ship.
Huge. Yeah. I've been watching Our Flag Means Death. And man, what just a great, again, another, I'm so happy. One of the things that I love most about flying again is just the TV that I can watch again.
Yeah, you can catch up on stuff.
Yeah, I've been telling Austin, I don't know, Mike, if you've watched it, but For All Mankind is a really, really clever show.
You are the second person to recommend that show to me today.
All right.
Like, did it just have like a new season or something?
Yes.
Like, it seems like
season
lot of
3
people
just
have
dropped.
There's
and they're going back to event based viewing. So a new episode drops for at least us on Friday. But it's very, very clever. The thing that I commend them for doing is they're doing this interstitial content to where it's like, 2 to 3 minute pieces of like newscasts, and it's a period piece in the same vein of like The Americans or Man in the High Castle, to where it's framing it with an alternate history, but they will do these like newscasts of actual stories, and I didn't realize that they're actually real historical events. Like, I didn't realize that there was a Russian fighter that shot down a Korean commercial airline. And 269 people died on board. This is like the height of the Cold War. And they use that within their fiction, but then they also completely juxtapose it and have people that are like, oh, no, that person died. Or like, no, they're still alive. But it's a wonderful premise, and it's done very, very well. It's got incredible performances. Some are a little soap opera-y, and it is that. It's always plot-driven. But yeah, I've really loved it. Really enjoyed it.
It's definitely on the list.
Yeah, like I said, it's coming. People are. I think I watched like the first few episodes and fell off it, but like a couple of people have like in the last week suggested it to me, so I do need to get to it.
It's definitely one of those like.
What am I watching at the moment?
Okay, now
Lincoln Lawyer, because it's my guilty pleasure
Which one?
book series that they find. There's a book series called The Lincoln Lawyer that I've always been a fan of, and there's a Netflix show now that is trash.
Wasn't that the movie with Matthew McConaughey that was based on a Grisham?
Yeah, and that's canon. So it's not a Grisham book. It's Michael Connelly. But in the books, that movie canonically exists, and the character is annoyed that they made a movie about him. Oh. So it's like a role. If you're into like trashy airport novels, The Lincoln Lawyer is such a good series.
That's like The Office.
I was Clive Cussler. And there's a few others that Dan Brown, of course. I fucking burned through that. I loved those.
To be fair, so did he.
Shit. A lot.
Not a man who did a second pass on any of those.
No, it was like, yep, that one's done.
Yeah, it was entertaining. But yeah.
I can't believe of all the episodes, we like cogently discussed some proper topical.
Cogent is maybe a little.
I think we
might be overstating at this point.
Salient,
in the show,
maybe? Like we all had some.
Salient. Yeah. We hit on insect Viagra.
I learned some new things.
Milk dairy production. Yeah.
We started off with, wistful nostalgia. That's summer. That's topical. Mm-hmm. Went into like the game that's really pinging right now. She's going to be so proud of us. Mm-hmm.
She's going to be really proud of us. We did well.
Yeah, apparently she messaged
Without
us
Mom
in the middle
here,
of
we
this.
did a really good job.
What'd she say?
That
she messaged
her
us.
meeting
Mom's not coming to pick us up after soccer practice? Is that what she said?
Basically.
Let me see.
Basically she's not
okay.
here.
Have fun without me. We did.
Yep.
We did.
Exactly.
We did. We had a lot of fun. Who's going to do it?
You should. I feel like you may have never. Have you?
I always fuck it up. I don't do good with intros and outros. I really don't.
Well, let's see.
But you know what the three of us do. You know our names. You've got all the information you need to make this
Let me just pull up my Wikipedia real quick. Hey, everybody. I'm Troy Baker. That is wrong. God damn it. I don't. Why is it so weird? Just fix it. Just make it right. See? That's Mike Bithell. He is a Brit. No.
Yeah.
Video game developer. Is that what we say? Writer? Director? What do we say?
All of the above, Troy.
That's fine. Austin Wintory. Boom, boom, boom. He's a video game composer. And Alanah Pearce is our soccer mom, and she's not picking us up after soccer.
No, we're walking home tonight.
Thank you. Go wishlist something on Steam today. Help an indie developer out. Find one that's just shitty and has nothing, and go make their day and go wishlist it.
And if you don't want to wishlist, all my games are in a sale on Steam right now.
I said something shitty. I covered it.
You did. I covered it too by self-promotion. It's the perfect system.
We'll hopefully see you all next week.
Bye. I don't know if there's video for this one.
What?
Why would there be video?
My God.
Oh my God. Another lost episode.
No, we have audio.
Holy shit, that's amazing.
We've got to get onto that animator. You stopped recording, I'm going to stop recording.